I'm happy to introduce André Schmechel, who is a Waldorf teacher in Göttingen, and he is class teacher and educational scientist and consultant for Waldorf schools. Then Georg Jürgens, he is the managing director of the European Council for Steiner Waldorf Education here in Brussels, and part of our ELIANT Alliance community, representative for the education field, and Dora Šimunović, Policy and Advocacy Coordinator at ECSWE from this European Council. So warm welcome to you, and we are now very happy to hear your input. We heard already that Waldorf schools are existing, but what do you think is your task in building the bridge between the ideal Waldorf model and the Brussels bureaucracy? You know, we are interested in bridge building, and maybe you can inspire us how you bring the ideal Waldorf model into a bridging with European bureaucracy on that field. So thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Hello, welcome everyone. I will stand even though I have a chair, but I'm a teacher and I like to stand. I feel very comfortable when I'm standing. Song of the Birds was the opening of the 3 cellists today. I was sitting back there and I thought, isn't that wonderful? There recently was a boy, I'm a class 4 teacher at the moment. He came in after a walk outside in the forest around the school and he said, Mr. Schmechel, why is it that the birds sing always so beautifully? They must be happy all the time, is what another child said. And I thought, that is true, and what a wonderful, healthy answer. They must be happy all the time. I think in 1919, when the first Waldorf school opened its doors to 256 children, 12 teachers in 8 classes in Stuttgart, this was one of the key inspirations to live a healthy life and to have the advantage of a healthy upbringing, so that a child says out of the blue, the bird sings so beautifully because he must be happy. And this fits so nicely together with the opening today. So Rudolf Steiner was asked in 1919 by a friend of his to help starting a school, which was then later on called Waldorf School. And the idea was that children could grow up in a healthy way, and a healthy way meant how can they use every day all of their senses? How can they have an abundance of sensual experiences every day? How can we have a teaching body that teaches every day, humorously, eagerly, committedly, is deeply interested in the individual child and its individual development, not a general standard development, but an individual development of each human being? And how can we do this in an artistic and lively way? Maybe we can summarize it like this. So this is quite an undertaking, and it still is today. It was in 1919. What was the idea then at the school? The school idea was the teacher welcomes the children every morning, asks inwardly the question, how can I help you today to accompany you through the day that you can become what you seek to become? Not how can you become what I want you to become or what I want to press into you. So I am more the servant as a teacher, trying to welcome the child and accompany the child, and maybe be a remover of hindrances here and there for the child or with the child. Highly individual and development-oriented. And development-oriented always means, for me, now in class 4, like up to class 8, I look for the child. Has every single child used all their senses every day, so their bodies can grow up healthily, and their mind and their soul. This is what I try to look for. And this is what people looked for in 1919. So what was the background why this came up in 1919? It was roughly 80 years after the beginning of the industrial era. So the Industrial Revolution has come kind of to an end, is what people said, but maybe it's still ongoing. Anyway, there was this situation around 1919 that people had moved away from places where they had lived before. They moved into the cities. They moved into workers' housing estates. They withdraw from nature. And all kinds of pedagogues, not only Rudolf Steiner back then, noticed we must build a room for children where they can reconnect, where they can find a balance for what they don't have anymore, the contact with nature and their natural contact for their senses. Also, we're still at the chaos of World War I just ending. And now I will go to our actual topic, because our current question is, what do we have 100 years later? We do not have the Industrial Revolution, but we do now have the digital revolution. Everything appears to be digitalized, and now a big reason why senses are not used anymore on a daily basis is because often children must live in a digital world, and their actual life takes place when they are offline. And there comes the task of the Waldorf School again, for which you are now the next one to speak. How can we development-oriented work with children every day in a highly digitalized world, in a modern world, which we want, but how can we offer children what they seek? I will pass on to Dora Šimunović.
Thank you, André. I think this was a wonderful story into why we did what we did and why we are still doing that. In the European Council for Steiner Waldorf Education, that is here represented by a couple of us, we have brought together a group of people who wanted to build a media curriculum that is in line with Steiner Waldorf pedagogy, but that is not only defined within the pedagogy and can be used to communicate what we would like media education to look like in all schools, let's say, and in all places. This is the name of the project, and luckily we had our project manager to write a great application, which European Commission then approved of and had funded a lot of the activities that you will see now. These are the official partners that we have worked with together. You can see there our name, but also next to us the International Association of Steiner Waldorf Early Childhood, so kindergartens. And we had a couple of organizations that are representing parents, which are extremely important actors when it comes to media education. And then we had Alanus Hochschule and Freie Hochschule Stuttgart, who are two universities that are every day working on research and developing practices that foster healthy media education. And then we had a few more pedagogical services online and in person, one of them being from Flanders here in Belgium. And we had also partnered with two schools. One of them is a Steiner school in Italy, and the other one is not a Steiner school from the Netherlands. They both wanted to give us real feedback on whether what we have developed in some offices, let's say, actually works in practice. And a lot of what they have told us, we had then changed our ways. And an important thing to say, though, is that everything that I will show you now is not just something people have come up with in the last couple of years, but has been practices that were developed, maybe some of them even from the beginning of Steiner Waldorf schools, and then moving forward to this day. And what we wanted to achieve was not only to think about what needs to happen in a school, but also to involve what happens at home and how this is usually done in Steiner Waldorf pedagogy, to put the child in the center and work together between teachers and parents on how to help this child grow up in a healthy way, surrounded by a lot of digital media that children are surrounded by every day. So we have developed a curriculum. This is a very elaborate document, and the full printout is outside on our little desk. So if you want to see it, you can see it there. But we developed guidelines that are supposed to support teachers and schools in developing their own way to introduce digital media education into their schools. And also a community and culture guide, which asks questions to teachers and to parents about their own digital media use or about their own analog media use, and about how the setting in which the child is being brought up needs to look like if we want to achieve a healthy development of a child in the digital age. To back this all up for the people who really like to read and understand where we're coming from, we have also published a background document, and we are offering training for teachers and for parents who want to involve in this a little bit deeper and include it in their practices. So the main goal was to develop something that will increase digital skills of children, but at the same time decrease digital risks. And in many ways, what that means is that we do not use digital tools for quite a long period of time and years, because during that time, children can still develop digital skills, but using analog tools, and then also they are not faced with a lot of risks that come with using digital tools and screen-based media. But we wanted to make sure that we are not prescribing a one-size-fits-all solution, but that what we are offering here is something that needs to be contextualized within a school community, but also within the regional or national regulation and culture also. And then at the end, within the European and global context that we are also trying to influence, which my colleague Georg will talk about in a minute. This is what I talked about when I said community and culture guide. This is a picture for you to show how we have been thinking about how to think about digital media use in schools and kindergartens, how to think about parents and teachers cooperating, so including the home use as well. And then in the middle there, in this kind of gray area, is how are these people who are adults and leading children or helping children develop healthy, how are they using digital media, and how are they thinking and reflecting about it? This is a much more elaborate document as well. And maybe the most interesting, the most talked about part of our work has been the curriculum that we developed with a lot of attention, that is mapped to European Commission's digital competence framework, which means that we can show that if someone is using this curriculum, they are developing the competences that the Commission and the mainstream digital media experts want all of us to have, or think would be good that we all have. But we had broken it down to the age group for children from 0 to 18-year-olds. And as you can imagine, from those early ages, there is no digital media involved, but there is a lot of things that the children are still developing that is extremely important when they start using digital tools. And at the end, maybe to mention, we are also collecting practice examples, which means some things that have been done in a classroom or at home that can inspire other practitioners, other teachers to adapt them to their own classrooms and their own children. This is a very scary slide, but what I wanted to show you here briefly, I will not read through all of this, is how we have broken down one segment of the curriculum. So in the previous slide, you can see over there in purple, critical information and data literacy as a competence area, and then analyzing and self-reflection as a sub-area of this competence. And if we want to break that down into something that can be learned, then we maybe start with the 15 to 18. What do we actually want the children to know? We want them to know how to explain, so to explain how and why information and disinformation intended to influence beliefs, actions, and choices might be directed at individuals. For example, there is quite a lot of these kinds of examples in the curriculum. And then if we move up from 12 to 15, we can see what is age appropriate in that age group that we can do in a classroom to help children get there at the end of their school career, or earlier from 9 to 12, or from 6 to 9, even to the beginning from 0 to 3 years old, where we would like children to be able to engage in shared attention with familiar adults and talk about their observation of the world. This is all on our website, and I will end with, I still need to give Georg 5 minutes at least, with saying that on one side we wanted to develop this to support our teachers and schools in Europe to do this with children on an everyday basis. But on the other hand, we also wanted to build something that can communicate what we think would be a good way to do media education towards the institutions that are constantly or have been constantly putting pressure on us to digitalize our schools and kindergartens. And we have been doing something to communicate that message that Georg can take over.
Very much. Can everybody hear me? Yes, now I can hear myself. So, we have now looked at the curriculum that Dora presented and all the other resources that we developed in the Hermes project. But before we started the project, we were already very active here in Brussels doing advocacy work, so working with the European institutions here in Brussels, the European Commission, the Parliament. But why are we doing this here, many may ask, when the European Union doesn't really have a competence in the field of education? And I want to answer that first and then give you a few examples from our work. What the EU does have is called a supportive role, meaning it facilitates sharing of good practices, it gives recommendations to member states on education. There is a lot of exchange of ideas happening, and so while that may sound very small, if we are looking at it, it also creates a free thinking space. That's my opinion, at least, about what we have here in Brussels for policy debate. Because there are not always immediately budget questions related to the education discussion at the European level, you can actually exchange ideas that are just recommendations and maybe develop their life much later. So we found here a place where if you get access to the discussion, you can freely discuss with policymakers about your needs and what is important for you. And we did that at the level of the European Parliament already way before the Hermes project started. For example, in 2018, there was a report discussed on education in the digital era. And our point here was that we found it very important to get into this report the idea of media and digital education being age-appropriate and development-oriented. So what Dora showed us with the project and what André also spoke about earlier. And later, during the pandemic, there was another report shaping digital education policy in the middle of distance learning at home in front of screens, where again we brought in this idea of age appropriateness and development orientation, but also the call for research into the effects of digital technology on children's learning and the importance of pedagogical autonomy. And these lobby efforts that we made over those two instances, they resulted in actual changes in the texts that you can find now if you look at these resources. At the moment, there is another report coming up that we wish to influence on impact of social media and the online environment on young people. And all these resources that were developed in the Hermes project, we are now going to use in this whole discussion with the institutions. So that's why the Hermes project is not only for schools, it's also informing our policy work here in Brussels. And then at the level of the European Commission, we spoke earlier, Dora spoke about the digital competencies framework for citizens. Actually, in the end, there will be many versions of this because this document is constantly evolving. It was revised a few times, and currently the next revision is ongoing for the DigCom Framework 3.0, where they are looking actually at learning outcomes, so what students should have learned at the end of their learning experience. And here again, all of these points from Dora's impressive slide, it was showing, I will not go there now, but it was showing everything that you would need to learn. All of these points that come from the curriculum, we try to feed into this discussion to illustrate the new version of DigComp with Hermes ideas. And I want to round off with one more point. There is not only the European Union, there are other international organizations, and among them is the Council of Europe in Strasbourg, that is a bit bigger than the EU. It also has countries like the Ukraine, for example, in it. And they are kicking off their year of digital citizens education. They are actually already in the middle of this, and Dora will soon represent us there already in a few days. And they have asked us for inputs also from the Hermes project, which we are happy to provide. So we wanted to give this conference a little bit of a message of hope that with the work we're doing, we managed to open some doors, and we are now getting more and more asked. We don't have to knock on doors, but we are asked to come into the room and provide our expertise. People are now not only coming us with questions about media education, but as a result of this fantastic work in the Hermes project, also for other questions, because we managed to establish ourselves as a trusted discussion partner over time. So that's what I wanted to bring. Thank you. More information on the Hermes website, and if you want a flyer with the QR code, please come to our info desk and you can collect one and then look at the resources yourself.
Yeah, thank you very much. We have still some minutes left, but all the other questions can then be addressed during the coffee break, and I will look that it starts sharp at 4 o'clock for all of us. But what I found also wonderful to mention in one of your slides, in the right corner above, the Hermes project was just nicely mentioned as supported also financially by the European Union. And I find this also really nice that this is a giving and taking and a real cooperation. So congratulations for that. And now, please come up with your questions.